Elizabeth first approached me about this, I began to think about and talk to her about what she would like for me to talk about. And since then, I've had the opportunity to go through a John Maxwell Live to Lead conference through Barry Blanton and Chad Patterson. And it was quite interesting, some of the nuggets I brought away from that I realized by accident I had been using in my own life for many years, not really understanding sometimes why I use them. I'm a big reader, so to date this year I've read 62 books.
Wow.
And as I read about things,
I think that's one more than last Friday already, isn't it?
Pardon?
Is that one more than last Friday?
I was on an airplane like 12 hours this week. As a matter of fact, yesterday morning I was in Reno, Nevada. Last night I was in Las Vegas, Nevada. And last night I was back in the Woodlands, Texas. So, yeah, I came back for this and for the Bell Institute Legacy Awards dinner tomorrow night, and I'm going back to Nevada. Anyway, I started thinking about what to talk about, and you know, my life is focused on impact. A little bit about me. I grew up in Memphis, Tennessee. I grew up very poor. My mom was a bank teller. My dad was a cop. We had 4 kids. We lived in a 3-bedroom, 1.5-bath duplex. My parents didn't own their first home until after I was in the military. I always tell my brother and sister, who were younger than me, that they enjoyed a different Milner family life than my brother and I did. But one of the things that my dad got us to understand very early as children is that everybody in life has the opportunity to give. There's always someone that we can help. It doesn't matter where you are in life, whether you're rich or poor, you're successful, not successful. Wherever you are in life, there's always someone you can help. And that carried me through my life understanding that I had a responsibility to live a footprint of impact. And that's what the goal for me is in my life. Every day I leave a footprint behind me. And my hope and focus is that footprint is positive, and it leaves people who encounter that footprint better than they were before they met me. That's what my sole focus in life is. Yeah, I'm an entrepreneur. I own several businesses. I'm a partner with Brett in a business, and I'm still trying to buy businesses. I teach college. I teach entrepreneurship. I teach leadership. But at the end of the day, my wife and I, we really focus on community and being able to give back and help those that need help. So as I thought about this, I thought about kind of where I've gotten where I am, and everybody asks me all the time, how do you do everything you do? How do you keep track of everything that goes on in your life? Because I'm a fairly busy person, and it used to be very chaotic for me to be able to manage that. And as I began to read books and study what very successful people, how they got where they were, I understood that all of them had a routine, right? So their life came down to a routine. And it was something that was talked a great deal about in the Live to Lead conference. A lot of people talked about the routine in their life, the routine in their business. So I think my routine is one thing that really helps keep me organized, it helps keep me focused, and it helps keep me moving forward on the path that I'm trying to lead each day. The other thing that I think that has become very important for me to understand in both my personal life and my professional life is that unless you're ready to face change, there's nowhere for you to go in life, right? And change is tough. And sometimes change requires you to stand in front of a mirror and ask yourself who you really believe you are in order to be able to move forward with change. And that change brings growth, right? And that growth is what brings achievement. It's what brings conquering challenges. It's what leads your roadmap in life forward. And then the third thing is, and I'll talk about it today, is there are really 3 simple little questions, and that's one of the things that we're going to raffle off today. The book's called The 3 Big Questions. It was written in the 70s by an Olympic skier. And those 3 questions is, what is your who, what is your what, and what is your why? And you hear that all the time, right? But it's very important. So if you focus everything that in your life on those 3 things, then you'll create a path that will always push you forward towards achieving whatever goals you set for yourself, towards achieving whatever impact you really want to make in your life. And in order to lead a path of impact, you really have to think about those ideas, those visions, and continue to push forward with that. You know, one of the things about being a leader, Barry and I have had this conversation many times, is, you know, there are different types of leadership styles at the end of the day, but in my mind, the leadership style that if you were to study very successful business leaders, very successful leaders of faith, very successful community leaders, they have all have one thing in common, and that's servancy, right? They can be transformational leaders, they can be charismatic leaders. There are many different types of, but they all share that one trait in common. And when you're thinking about yourself as leading yourself or leading those within your team or your business that you own, you have to think about, as a servant leader, at what times during my life do I need to have someone who helps push me, or am I okay with my vision pulling me? Or in another way, within your business, with your team, whether it's 2 people or 1,000 people, at some point in that journey, a leader has to know when you need to push to get people past their stopping points or their challenges with change. And many times they have to know, more importantly, when they need to pull themselves or their team through. So I heard this great story in church about 3 months ago that really brought to mind me the concept of pushing and pulling. There was a rancher in West Texas, and he owned the largest ranch in the world, okay? It was like 400,000 acres or something. And he built this gigantic home on it. And on this home, he had this pool that was the size of 2 Olympic swimming pools. And he filled it with alligators and crocodiles. And he had the most giant parties there every holiday. Sometimes he would have them every weekend. People would fly in from all over the world to go to this rancher's parties. And during these parties, there was food and drink and everything. And he would always get up in the middle of the party, and he would stand up by the pool, and he'll say, "I'll give anyone $20 million if they can swim from one end of this swimming pool to the other," right? How many volunteers do you think he had to do that? Not very many, right? So party after party goes on. So 4th of July, he's having this big party at his ranch, and everybody's drinking and having food and celebrating, and he gets up and he says, "I'll give anybody in this party $20 million if you can swim from one end of this pool to the other." And out of nowhere, you heard this splash, and everybody turns around. And there is a guy in this swimming pool. I mean, he's battling alligators, he's battling crocodiles, swimming his way across. He finally makes it to the other end. He gets out of the pool, his clothes are tattered, he's bleeding, he's laying on the ground, barely breathing, and the rancher's just so excited. He goes, "Oh my gosh," he says, "I've never had anybody take me up on swimming the pool." He goes, "I can't believe you did it, congratulations. So, you know, would you like to have $20 million, or I'll give you half of my ranch?" He says, "Quite honestly, I don't care about either one of those. I want to know who pushed me in." So, I know it's a funny story, but it talks about sometimes we need to be motivated by push, right? Because we're not always comfortable when we're going through change. And we need that business partner, or we need that life partner, or we need that life coach, you know, to kind of push us through those challenges and struggles of change, right? And so, you know, what many successful business leaders talk about, and what they talked about at the Maxwell event, and what I've learned, is that it's during these times of change, when we're most uncomfortable, that we learn the most about ourselves, right? It's in those times of the most discomfort we've ever faced going through change, whether it's a business that's struggling, a relationship that's struggling, that we learn so much about ourselves, right? And those times are many times our greatest periods of growth for ourselves, right? Because we really get to know ourselves, and we really begin to dig in and seek out, how am I going to make this change? How am I going to continue to push forward? And, you know, for me, it's my faith. I spend a lot of time in prayer, and I spend a lot of time talking to my Savior about how to get through change, right? For some people, that might be a business coach that helps get them through the change. For some people, it might be their life partner or a best friend or a business partner. But at some point in your life, you're always going to be faced with that change challenge, right? And that's when you really grow. That's when you move from here to here, and you begin to build those building blocks and the foundations of who we are. Effective change is a painful process. But, you know, going through change is a healing agent. When you come out the other side of change, how do you feel? You feel good, don't you? You know, when you've struggled through something tough and you've made it through it, you look back and you think, man, I didn't think I was going to make it through that journey. But through the help of others, through the fortitude, through pushing forward, I feel really good about how I made it through that. I feel really good about how I've grown, who I've become because of that change. So, you know, you talk about change and you talk about vision. And then one of the big things I've learned from reading all these books and going to conferences like the Maxwell Conference is great people have great vision, right? People who don't accomplish things don't have vision. People who accomplish things have vision. Vision is something that's big. It's something you have to work for, right? Me, I have vision, and my visions are written down, and I'm the kind of person, well, my wife says I'm a little hard-headed, so I have them written down in a lot of places. They're on my mirror in my bathroom. They're on my phone. I keep a picture of where my phone went, in my phone room, right? They're in my planner. Every time I open my planner, to the left side, there are the things that are important to me. They're the goals that I'm working on right now. They're my vision. My vision is where I want to be one day. It's the legacy I want to live, right? So, you know, one of the things I want you to think about is your vision. Now, we were talking about routine. A lot of people ask me about routine. I want to show you what my routine is. My routine, I didn't make it up. I learned my routine from reading about many successful leaders, all right? I'm fortunate, or sometimes less fortunate, that I wake up naturally between 5:15 and 5:30. And it doesn't matter the time zone, unfortunately. So when I'm in Nevada or California, I still wake up at 5:15 or 5:30. Even though, you know, I don't go to bed at Houston time, I go to bed at LA time. And the first thing I do every morning is I go to my office, and it's my quiet time. It's 15 to 20 minutes of me, right? It's 15 to 20 minutes of just talking to myself. I spend time after that. I have, you know, I'm going through a Lead Like God program. It's a book study series, and so I do that each morning. And I spend my time doing that. The next thing I do is I review what my day before was like, right? Did I get everything accomplished from the day before I wanted to get accomplished? And if I didn't, why? And what can I do today to help accomplish those? By that time, my wife is up. I go help her feed the dogs. We have 5 little dogs. Help her get the dogs fed. I got to give a dog an insulin shot for diabetes. We go through this morning routine, and then I get back to my office. My wife brings me a latte every morning in my office. And then that's when I begin. I spend 30 minutes every morning reading a book. All right? And I read 2 books at the same time. I read one that is what I'll call a professional book, whether it be personal development, business, leadership, culture, something that has to do with continuing to build me from that side. And I always read a fun book. It can be a history book, a biography of a president, it can be a spy novel, but I read also that second book. When I'm finished with that, I look at what my day has for me, and I began to plan mentally for my day. By now, it's probably around 7:30 or 8 o'clock. That's when my day starts, all right? One of the cool things that was reinforced to me at the Maxwell Conference, a guy named Daniel Pink wrote a book called Win, which I had never heard of until the conference. And I thought, man, I'm pretty smart because I actually do some of the things he says you should do. So I make all critical decisions in my life before 10:30 in the morning. And I'm going to tell you why it's a good idea to do that in just a minute. Every meeting or important conference call I have in my life, I have before 10:30 in the morning. My afternoons are what I call my coffee tour, right? I have a lot of coffee with people. I do that in the afternoon. It's not that they aren't important, it's just that they aren't the most important things that are going to impact my focus on my vision, my focus on my goals, and the decision making that I have to make in my personal and professional life. And then, you know, usually dinner comes around, and then my wife and I spend our family time together, which this may sound crude, but we schedule. And then after that, my wife will go do her personal things, and I'm back into that mode of critical decision making again. I'm in my office. I'm reviewing my day. I'm looking at what I got accomplished and what I didn't get accomplished. I'm moving that to the next day. I'm reviewing everything that's coming up the next day and everything that's coming up the next week, right? And I'm prioritizing things, right? And then the last thing I do before I head back to family time with my wife, whether it's in bed with our 5 dogs that they let us share with them, or we're watching something in our theater room with our 5 dogs who let us share the couches in the theater room, is I keep a gratitude journal. And every day, every night before I go to bed, I write down 3 things I'm grateful for. And you know what? Sometimes I'm grateful I made it through the day. Sometimes there's 5 or 6 pages about one thing I'm grateful for. I do that every day. And then I read for 30 more minutes before I turn my lights off in my office and head to go do whatever is left with family time. That's my routine, okay? What I've learned through reading, what I've learned through going through conferences like the Maxwell Live to Lead, is that is a very similar routine to many successful people in business and life. It's almost exactly the same. And one of the cool things is we had a guy named Daniel Pink make a web video presentation to us about timing in life and how you time things. And I'm not going to go into the details of it. I would recommend you go buy the book. I bought the book that day. I've read it on the airplane back and forth. It's a really good book, but it talks about there are 3 types. People are 3 types of birds. You're a lark, you're an owl, or you're what's called a third bird. And it has to do with your sleep cycle, and it narrows down then the times of the day that should be your impact times, right? So for me, it just happened to bear out that I probably shouldn't be making any decisions after about 11 o'clock in the morning because I'm an early riser, right? And so my peak sleep time is earlier in the wee hours of the morning than other people's are. I go to bed around 10:30 and I'm up 5:15 to 5:30. So you look at what is the midpoint of your sleep cycle. For those people who stay up till midnight and get up at 10, their midpoint is going to be much later than my midpoint is. And it was quite interesting to see all of the scientific data that he had to support this. And this data wasn't over like 1,000 people. It was over hundreds of thousands of information pieces that were studied to support that your life has peaks, and I won't say this right, my wife always says I say it wrong, troughs, is that right, where you go back down? Huh? Troughs. Okay, it's spelled the same way. Troughs. And then you go back up again for that last peak of your day, right? And, you know, I mean, Barry can attest to this. I was shocked at all of the information that supported this. For instance, I'll just give you a couple that I wasn't going to talk about, but they're just so cool to me. When kids take standardized testing, they're spaced out during the day, right? Kids who take a test in the morning score an average, is it 15%?
I can't remember the percentage.
It was significantly better on a test than the kids who were scheduled to take the same test in the afternoon. And some of the kids in the afternoon were the brightest kids in the class, right? But they were in their trough. They were in their trough, right? Judges are more lenient in the afternoon than they are in the morning. And this is hundreds of thousands of court decisions this man had universities study for him, big data crunching all of this data, right? I mean, doctors, there's nobody here's a doctor, right? You don't want to go see a doctor in the afternoon. And you don't want to have surgery in the afternoon. The number of anesthesiologist mistakes in mid to late afternoon were exponentially greater than the mistakes in the morning. And this is through studying hundreds of thousands of pieces of information, right? It's just not like go look at one hospital. It's thousands and thousands and thousands of surgeries. So, you know, if big data says there are good times when you should be making critical decisions and probably many times where you probably shouldn't be, then who am I to argue with that, right? I'm just fortunate that I read enough books that led me down that path before I heard of Daniel Pink. So, you know, the next thing I want to talk to you about is I want to talk about what I call the 3 big questions, right? This book was written in the 70s. It's out of print. You can only get it through Amazon. Most of them are used. Many of them have highlight and writing in them. I ordered like 20 of them and I found one nobody's ever written in or highlighted. So I'm going to give it away today, right? But, you know, when you think about it, you have to think about what your who, your what, and your why. And those things have to be clearly defined, right? And by clearly defined, I don't mean they need to be defined up here. I mean they need to be defined on here. How many of you really have a written plan for your life? You don't need to raise your hand. You can if you want to, because I'm not here to embarrass anybody. But if you don't have a written plan for your life, you don't have a plan, right? You have a dream. The difference between a plan and a dream is one of them's written down. You can go back and look at it. It's like having now we have GPS, but believe me, back in my days when I used to drive from Memphis to California, you had to get a road map out, right? And you knew how far it was to each point so you could figure out where gas and hotels were, right? You have to have a road map. You have to have a road map for your life. You have to have a road map for success. If you don't have a road map that's in writing, you're on a trip, not a journey, and life is a journey, okay? So I want to encourage you. I want to encourage you to think about who is it you really want to be when you get to the end. When you get to the end and you think about who you have been in your life, that's what I want you to think about. And I want you to begin to write down, and trust me, it will change. I have every one I've ever written down in a file cabinet, and there's probably over 100 of them. Because I've accomplished some things in my life much sooner than I thought I would accomplish. And I have things in my life I thought I would have accomplished years ago, I still haven't accomplished, right? So it's an organic, breathing document for me. The next thing is your what, and that is how. What are you going to do? What impact do you want to make, right? At the end of the day, what is your vision for what you want to accomplish, okay? And those are your goals, and your goals change, right? Because goals can be a very short-term thing, they can be a mid-term thing, or a long-term thing. They're going to change. You're going to go in and out of those. You're going to accomplish some of them quickly, some of them are going to take longer. And then the last piece of that puzzle is your how, right? And that's what I call my life plan, my how. At the end of the day, that's my life plan. It's my game plan for my journey. It's my roadmap. I didn't bring a copy of my roadmap, but I have it on a piece of construction board in my office. My wife hates it. It's UT orange. And my office faces the street, and it's taped to the window in the office, so I can see it when I'm sitting at my desk. She goes, everybody that drives by our house sees that orange thing. I said, I want them to know I'm a UT fan. But it's for me. I see it constantly, right? And I never have any questions about it. And whenever I'm stuck, I'm sitting at my desk and I'm stuck and I'm trying to think, man, why am I even going to go through this? Why do I even want to take on this challenge? Eventually I look up and I see that, right? And I sit there and I think, who am I to question that? I already know what my why is, right? And if this fits into that, then there is no question about why I want to go through it. There is no question about why I want to go through potentially the pain or the challenges or the financial challenges to accomplish it. I mean, I tell everybody I'm semi-retired, right? My wife says I'm the busiest unemployed person she's ever seen in my life. I'm not sure which one of those is worse, but You know, at the end of the day, I'm not ready to stop. I haven't fulfilled my why, right? And I don't believe that I've been put in a position to make enough impact yet for my why to be meaningful. If you know what that means.
Mm-hmm.
If that makes sense. So when you think about those, you know, to me, those are the two biggest core components for me of life. The third one is feedback. That's a tough conversation to have, right? In business, feedback is very important, but in your personal life, feedback is just as important, right? You have to have people around you who will hold you accountable to who you want to be, to what you want to accomplish, and to what your vision is. So I'll give you some examples from a business standpoint of what has been very successful for me in business when it comes to feedback. And I'm not talking about performance reviews. I don't believe in performance reviews. Haven't believed in performance reviews in over 12 years. But in my businesses, I've always done two things. The first one is twice a year I sit down with everybody who works for me or one of my businesses, and I have speed dating with them. And by speed dating, I mean I sit down with them for 15 minutes and I ask them 3 questions. What do you like about working here? What do you not like about working here? And what could we do to make it a better place for our customers? Those 3 questions, right? The first time I asked the questions of a team that I led, I got a lot of, oh God, everything's great here, I love it, everybody's wonderful, we're doing a great job. And I realized it was because they didn't trust the feedback process, right? Because how many times will the owner of a business sit down with everybody who works for him and ask them those 3 questions and really want to hear the answer to the questions? Not very often, right? So I said, all right, I kind of figured out what's going here. Here's what I'll do. I put lime green index cards in the break room, and I said, I want everybody to fill out a lime green index card. I want you to answer those 3 questions. And I put a mailbox in the break room. I said, I'd like for you to put those in the mailbox. And just in case you think I know how to read everybody's handwriting, I'm going to have my assistant go get all of the index cards, and she's going to enter every one of them into a spreadsheet without me looking at it, shred the index cards, and email all of you and me the spreadsheet at the same time. So you heard what the feedback was at the same exact time I did, right? So the first time we did it, I mean, there were probably like 180 items on this spreadsheet. Some of them I really couldn't do much about. For instance, I couldn't give everybody a free card on their birthday. I wished I could, but I couldn't, you know. But I would say 90% of the feedback was very meaningful. And I consider myself a leader who walks around a lot, and the majority of the feedback I got, I would never have known about just by walking around. So what I did is, this is really cool, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to let y'all figure out what to do about this feedback. So I let them put together a team of 7 people. And this team took that spreadsheet and they got together and they began to prioritize the items on the spreadsheet of the things we were going to focus on 3 or 4 at a time. And each week on Friday at noon, I would email out that spreadsheet to everybody and tell them what the status was of the things we were working on. Transparency, right? What does transparency create in life? Trust, right? Faith in the process, trust. So every Friday at noon I did that, and we started moving through the list, you know. And I remember one time I was in Germany at a Mercedes meeting, and I started getting text messages at about 2:30 in the morning over there saying, hey boss, are you going to send the spreadsheet out today? I'd forgotten about the time change, right? So I got up, I went to my laptop, I sent out the spreadsheet. But that's how important that spreadsheet became to people. At 12:01, they were looking for it. At 12:30 their time, they were panicked because they hadn't seen it. It was their faith in the process. It was what symbolizes my word to them and change within the organization, right? So I would say to you that in your business, if you're small, that's an easy thing to do. If you're larger, it's an easy thing to do. You just have to be committed to doing it, right? Now, let's bring that back to us as individuals. We need to have a feedback accountability partner. I have two of them. I have a coach who lives in Southern California that I've known for 20 years, who's been my personal business coach for 19 years. He is a great accountability partner because he doesn't pull any punches, right? And the other cool thing about him being my accountability partner, and I'm not trying to get into too much religion, but he's also a Christian and I'm a Christian. So he can hold me accountable in ways that are impactful to me on a personal basis, right? And then I also have someone here who is my accountability partner, who I meet with constantly all the time, and I talk about challenges and ideas, and that person helps me remain accountable there. So, I've talked about three things, right? I've talked about routine. I would recommend that you go study routine in successful leaders. If there's a leader of a business out there that you admire, go learn about them, study about them, because I promise you they have a routine to their success every day. The second thing that I talked about is the three big questions, right? We all know what they are, and many of us will say, I know the answers to them. But what I'd ask you to do is write down the answers to them. Look at them every day. I journal. They're in my journal. Every day I see those three questions as I journal each day, right? And the third thing I would say to you is find a feedback accountability partner, whether it be a friend, a coach, someone you trust to be completely honest with you, and someone you trust to be willing to tell you things you don't really want to hear sometimes. Someone who's willing to push you out of that comfort zone so you can continue to change and grow. So I'd leave you with those three things, all right? Thank you.